let's spend a few minutes building upon some of the concepts that we discussed in our video on open source investigation frameworks. First, let us set up some differences between investigation and analysis. So the key points here are that investigations are usually reactive, done either in response to a crime that has already occurred or is ongoing, or that an incident has happened. They answer 5 discrete questions, and the investigator gathers facts through a variety of tools and methods available. The objective is to usually develop evidence in accordance with the rules of evidence so that they can be admitted during a criminal trial. Let's turn to analysis. Analysis can be thought of as putting pieces together that helps identify, stop, or mitigate future threats. They're generally forward-looking, not reacting, but there are a number of things that are very similar to investigations. They also have to answer the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how, but they usually focus more on the how or the who. They also use terms like possible or likely to show that it hasn't happened yet or that it's an estimate. In reality, investigations and analysis share a lot in common. Both can learn from each other, and in the next few minutes we'll explore some of the more commonalities and ways to think as both an investigator and an analyst. Analysis is a mindset and a work rhythm that is often developed over a period of time. In his landmark book, R.M. Clark, Intelligence Analysis, a Target-Centric Approach published by CQ Press 2004, listed 9 fundamental professional qualities that analysts should have. The list's attributes deal primarily with unknowns, how things shape the future. They must be objective, curious, have a broad perspective, have very good interpersonal skills, be able to synthesize and integrate complex information, have good pattern recognition, be able to see and spot trends and predictions and indicators, be able to make good use of literature for sources and collection and assess their validity, and understand the context. Jumping to conclusions is probably one of the surest ways to fail and fall flat. What's common in both investigations and analysis is that they start and end with facts. While investigation must always be about facts, because lawyers are the ones that actually argue or advocate for a certain conclusion, intelligence analysis often includes assessments, which are basically conclusions derived from facts as the analyst knows them. Since even the information they have is often incomplete or have major gaps. Either way, focus on facts, don't rush or jump to conclusions, and follow the facts where they lead you. I could have put the next 2 slides in the framework video, but I really like to put them here because I think they're good reinforcements. And while they're a little bit more intelligence focused than on OSINT, the concepts are very similar. These 2 models are more formal because they were developed by individuals who have long and successful national security careers. In the intelligence community, this is a much more stable and consistent process that is adhered to very systematically. For our purposes today, it's good to think of the cycle of constantly being reviewed and incorporating new information. Many times there are gaps. Those gaps are the prime focus of many discussions by professionals. Asking questions, being skeptical, and insisting on good corroboration and validation are very important. I appreciate this model too because it's another way of showing how vital it is to receive feedback at every step of the process. Remember, what we do as investigators and analysts means that nothing if we don't answer questions and the requirements of our client or customer. Using feedback helps us to refine and clarify their needs and questions. It gives us a sense of whether or not we're on the right track. It also gives us a sense of whether or not we can make sense or have to go and get new or other information. And it gives us a sense of what we're really looking for in the current case, but also in the future case. It will help guide us. We learn and should get better as we go, and all thanks to the feedback along the way. Think of intelligence as a pyramid that starts with lots of data, raw data. The top of the pyramid is understanding, truly a master comprehension of the situation. At each successive layer moving up, we integrate the information, combine it with other data that's been corroborated and validated. This allows for a cohesive picture to develop. Knowledge is the theoretical or practical understanding of a subject, while awareness is a general familiarity with the overarching issues, but not a deep mastery of it. Understanding allows us to make really good decisions with as much validated information as possible, which should allow for a better execution of the proposed solution. All of this depends on a few baseline questions. Who's the customer? What's the purpose? What is the product the customer needs? What are the real questions? Is there any more context needed? What has been done previously? A solid understanding of a problem or subject belies a good decision-making paradigm. Just having good information is not enough. It's important to know that decisions are made by humans, and all of us come with our own perspectives based on our life experience, upbringing, and many other factors. Judgment is the act of or ability to make well-informed decisions or come to sensible conclusions based on the available information. Good decisions should be as true or appropriate or as excellent as possible. Remember that numerous factors come to play into decisions, meaning we have to inform and shape them often. A good example is an probable cause affidavit, where the investigator may state that, based on my training and experience, I am aware that cybercriminals often use malware that have been customized in various ways, which is likely the product of a sustained covert reconnaissance by the criminals of the victim network before they launch their cyber attack. After reciting a potential list of attack methodologies in the malware customization process, this all helps the judge, who is probably not a technical specialist, understand and comprehend what malware is and how it is deployed to steal data. It provides meaningful context to the current facts. Collins English Dictionary defines evaluation as ascertaining or setting the amount or value of, or to judge and assess the worth of, appraise. We evaluate data in OSINT investigations because people do post false information. In doing this credibility assessment, we are seeking to answer these questions. What we really want to know is how they got the information they were relaying. Is it firsthand? Did they hear it from someone else? Do they have proof like video or documents or email or audio? We want reliable information, so we need to look beyond merely what is being communicated, but who is doing the communicating, how they are basing it on, and how they obtained it. And we always want to corroborate it. And this, of course, involves critical thinking. We just don't take someone at their word. We test it to see if it fits the facts and the truth. Critical thinking is the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment, according to Oxford Dictionary. Some people confuse one meaning of critical. They think that it has to do with the negative treatment of a subject, as in, that thing is bad, or I don't like her. But critical thinking, from Merriam-Webster's point of view, is, quote, exercising or involving careful judgment or judicious evaluation, unquote. We want to make really good decisions, And to avoid jumping to conclusions, we test and look at a topic from numerous vantage points in order to make sure that we really understand it. I hope you can see how this all comes together. This list of critical thinking questions is a great way to start. It should not be taken lightly, especially the more serious or consequential the issue. The more time spent, especially in a group setting, going through them methodically and inquiring is time well spent. There are whole courses and books dedicated to this subject, but I want to make sure that everyone has this list available, because many times we don't think about the assumptions before we start, and we take them for granted. It's something to be watchful. So if we remember the pyramid from a few moments ago, we know that if we start with raw data, we move all the way up to understanding. By analyzing the information, providing context, and making sure that it is relevant, timely, accurate, actionable, insightful, clear, and objective, we can ensure that the information provided helps to make good judgments. Often we are not the people who are making the decisions, but as professionals we must provide the best products to them. As a reminder, we always have to be aware of those rabbit holes, wandering down the never-ending tunnel that leads nowhere productive. Some people call this being click happy. It's really a time waste. The question is often when to stop. Well, the answer is the law of diminishing returns. This is the concept from economics that says obtaining benefits that go beyond a certain point then fail to increase in the proportion to the expected or extended results. Basically, when things stop being productive, you want to stop. Before we close out this video, I want to show you how this is put into action, especially in the OSINT world. So this is me. I searched myself on the website PQ. The information is pretty interesting, and I was really intrigued, which is why I really wanted to include it. The data is actually pretty impressive. It's also a great lesson in always being skeptical. So from the beginning, it has my age generally right. It says that I live in Glen Burnie, which I only lived in Glen Burnie 10 years ago, so it's pretty bad. That's way off. It doesn't have my current address, which is actually another state, and I've lived here for almost 4 years. It also links to a MySpace page. Well, I've never had a MySpace account. The one at the bottom, you can see the age 32. I've never lived in Timonium, and I'm sad to say that I hardly ever visited. That's not a phone number I ever had. Curiously enough, the relative section is actually pretty accurate. Now, notice that those are sponsored by a website called Ben Verified, which I do not recommend because they are a pay site. Again, the lesson here is always be skeptical. Some information may appear to be accurate, some is maybe sort of right, and then some is just plain wrong. So the key is always being careful. Now let's look at a site called Pipl. It's probably pronounced people, but P-I-P-L. This is also very interesting because the name search, this was just a name search with nothing else. I am returned as the third result, which is interesting. Now I will say that this is an old Facebook profile photo that's been cropped significantly. I found that quite interesting. Ironically, Pipl's API actually cropped out my wife and I, which is hilarious. This is the baptism of my daughter. Everything else is pretty much right on. I just tried to rerun this as I'm writing, and it seems now that I've moved down to result number 6. So I guess that I've moved down their list. And the profile picture is gone, having just been replaced by a letter. Again, I think it's important to show how much this information can change, and one never knows. I also want to note that recently people went behind a paywall, so this isn't even an option anymore. However, it is important to illustrate the use and importance of analysis, validation, and skepticism of information, both online and off. Well, I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of analysis and critical thinking. Next, we'll be talking in depth about social media and networks. This can also be helpful to our study because mapping social networks can show how people know each other and in criminal enterprise who has the power. It can also show where fissures or divisions lie, which can be used to exploit the criminal group. Finally, and most importantly, people often communicate via social network, and thus it can help identify the plans and intentions of a criminal organization. So, until next time, thanks for watching, and see you on the discussion boards.